Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Court Report. I am Sarah Hecht, joined as always by the wonderful Orlando Williams. We are here because it's Trailblazers game day.
Yes, it is.
Yes, and not only is it Trailblazers game day, it is a big Trailblazers game day. The homecoming of one Mr. Kevin Love, as well as our first peek at the new Big Three of the East. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and the Cavaliers are in town tonight. Moda Center, game starts at 7 p.m. It is on NBA TV tonight, and Mike and Mike will have that call nationally.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll be able to see it on NBA TV locally. You might actually. Not quite sure. Either way, it's going to be a great game tonight. Like I said, that tip-off is at 7 p.m. It's on Fox Sports Radio 620. You're going to be able to catch it all over the place tonight. Very important for the Trailblazers to get a win. You guys are in the chat already, and you are bringing up some great points. So we're just going to hop right over there, and as we work through kind of what's going on with the Trailblazers, whether it's offensively, defense looking pretty good, how the guys are feeling. We'll talk about the injuries, talk about tonight. And as always, you guys are in the driver's seat in this chat. So if you have questions about what's going on tonight, where the Trailblazers stand, we're sitting at 1-2, kind of a little bit of a rough start. There was a good point in here that the Trailblazers started 2-2 last year. Very good point, 2-4-7.
That's right.
But let's hop into this chat right away because these guys have some questions about what's going to be happening tonight, and it's really very important that we get to those. First one, Planet PDX says, let's chat on Lillard becoming more of a distributor with the weapons on this team, just like CP3. So this, of course, can be tied into the fact that Damian Lillard has had some offensive struggles as of late. Tough time getting started, not scoring until late. We find out that yesterday after practice, he has an abdominal strain. We really don't know how long that's been going on, if it's been through the last few games. We'll find out tonight since that news kind of came out.
If it did,
Yeah. That news came out after practice. No one had really heard a whisper of it, and we were notified by the Trailblazers PR that he had the strain. He's probable for tonight. When he's listed as probable and Kyrie Irving's on the other side of the ball, you know he's going to go.
That's right.
By the way, he's really hyped up to play a little bit of Kyrie Irving. But let's talk to this point. Let's talk about Damian Lillard, the other offensive weapons on this team, and kind of the stagnation of the offense in general. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Damian Lillard, I've always considered him and Kyrie Irving the future point guards of the NBA. And what you see from the future point guards is they're not as much of distributors as much as they are floor generals and leaders and scorers. And that's just what they do. Their way of getting their team going is to produce. They run the offense, they run it with efficiency, but at the same time, they're a constant threat on offense. So Dame becoming a distributor to the extent that you see from a Chris Paul or what you saw from a Steve Nash, that type of player, not sure that's what it's going to be for him. His asset is going to be more, or strength is going to be more from the scoring perspective. He's a threat on the floor. When he drives the ball, he collapses the defense because he is that threat, and he's able to distribute from there. So that's what I would expect from him. I think that's what you're going to see from the next generation point guard anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to that point, you guys, one of the polls that we have right below the video that you're watching right now, these polls are up before the game every single day, so make sure to come and get your votes in because they're going to help drive what we talk about here on this show. One of the questions has to do with the scoring drought, which is one of the topics that you guys are talking about here in the chat. And that question is, how can Portland end their early season scoring drought? The options that you could respond are, it's psychological, so stop thinking about it and just play the game. I think that if you ask a lot of the guys, Wesley Matthews included, they'll say, it's nothing crazy. We're not worried. When I asked him yesterday, are you worried? That simple question, he said, worried? We're not worried. We're 3 games in. Let's relax. So very good point. I think that a lot of the guys know, when they talk about what it is that is going to be changing this offense, which we're going to get to our thoughts on this too, it's just the little things. So they're not stressed about it. But that was one of your options, that it's totally psychological, so let's not blow it out of proportion. Let's just play the game. The other option, focus on defense. The defense will interject energy into a game, which you will then carry on to the offensive side of things. The next option, which most of you guys, 36% of you guys agree that Damian Lillard has got to get it going, plain and simple. a lot of pressure on a young point guard.
Yes.
I mean, not that
Yes.
Damian Lillard can't
He can
take it.
handle
Of
it.
course, he definitely can handle, I think, any kind of pressure.
That's
We've
right.
seen that from the
Yes.
shot, from really
Correct.
everything that Damian Lillard has ever put on the floor.
Right.
We've
That's
seen that a
right.
lot. And then your last option was don't change a thing. Droughts happen, and shots will tend to fall. And you guys are pretty across the board on what you think the right response is. But in talking about Damian Lillard, why don't you guys tell us your thoughts in the chat on Damian Lillard and how important he is to really getting the offense going, because he's not the only one that's missing shots.
Right.
And to get back
That's
to the
right.
original point, I mean, the team was shooting in that game against the Warriors through the first quarter, or a good portion of the first quarter, 16%, you
Right.
guys. Shots, Stotts talked about the fact that there was 30 good shots that were good shots that just didn't go in the
Absolutely.
basket. I mean,
Yeah.
and what is it when you're playing a game? I'm sure that you've experienced some of these with your teams where the shots just aren't falling. So what do you do?
Yeah, and it's going to happen when you realize it's going to happen. But I guarantee you this is a guarantee, and I don't make very many guarantees like this. You will not see anyone backing off of Damian Lillard, daring him to shoot a three-pointer.
No.
That's what the indicator will tell you, that he is still a significant threat and that the shots are going to fall. And when they do, they're going to come in bunches. But what we need to see is the consistent dribble penetration, good looks at the basket, the offensive efficiency that we saw last year. When we get to that place, we will begin to see shots fall. I don't think the players are concerned, because as a player, when you get into those places, when you're missing shots and you seem like they're open shots, they're good looks, there might be some times where you press a little bit too hard and you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't have taken that one. But the reality of it is you just keep shooting. And you realize the great thing about the NBA is that very quickly you're going to have another opportunity to make a shot.
Absolutely.
And that's in fact the case.
Absolutely. And when it comes to this team, I mean, if you think about really the 4 offensive scoring threats, 4 of the 5 starters are offensive scoring
That's right.
threats. It's only going to take one of them really getting it going.
Yes.
And not in like a takeover mode, like on Sunday night when LaMarcus Aldridge took over in the fourth quarter. But one of those guys comes out hitting in the
Yeah.
first quarter, and the dominoes fall. The rest
right.
of them will, because you kind of build confidence
Yeah.
off of the way that other guys are shooting. They're like, oh, okay, we're over this drought now. Okay,
That's right.
Let's just move on.
Absolutely.
You know,
There's something therapeutic about watching the ball go through the net. And when you make a few shots, or you see your teammates making a few shots, it can have a contagious impact on the rest of the guys. But what you need to see is you need to see it evenly distributed, because your point to LaMarcus Aldridge taking over, that's a little different, because everyone expects LaMarcus Aldridge to have that ability, and he does. But when you start seeing Nick Batum knock down a 3, and you see Wesley Matthews knock down a 3, and Dame knocks one down, then all of a sudden, all of the floodgates open, and everyone still, their confidence just increases that much more.
completely. And one of the things that kind of offline and on Twitter and the conversations that I've been having with you guys, and I'm sure that you guys have been having these same conversations with your friends and your Rip City Blazer Maniac pals, is the importance of a game like tonight. So you have had a first game win, good win. It was close, but still a good win.
Right.
Did not play the way that we wanted to play down in Sacramento. Really, the defensive rebounding and all that kind of stuff was just not looking good. And then you play a game, which was just, you guys, a weird game against the Warriors, in that we were in this game until the very end, regardless of the fact that we shot the ball like garbage.
Correct.
Shot the ball like garbage, and still we're right there at the end
Yes.
until, whether it's, calls getting in your head or just kind of falling apart at the end.
Right.
Those were it was like a whole bunch of fluke plays and fluke things one
It was.
after another.
Yeah.
Those things just are not going to happen later. So panic button, take your hands off it, But at the same time, the importance of a game like tonight, regardless of the fact that it's against the Cleveland Cavaliers, if it's against any top team, and you're coming in after a 1-2 start of having 2 games that you probably should have won, couple shots go in, and you're looking at 3-0 start here.
Absolutely.
How important as a player are you pinning this game as? Because I know as a fan, I'm saying this game is serious. Because if and I'm not saying we start to worry if things go the wrong way, but there's a little bit more concern that is happening for the pure mental factor.
Yeah.
If the Trailblazers don't walk away with a win tonight. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I think there's aspects of this game that have both underlying connotations to them and then overall impact. And the overall impact, we'll start with that, is that you want to feel good about the start to your season. Now, I remember last season, we started out, there was a loss to the Phoenix Suns, and everyone thought the sky was falling at that point, and everyone was worried.
Loss is a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, so a reserved response to that loss. But overall, I think this game does have some of those overarching connotations to it where you want to feel like you're getting into your rhythm. It's not that you've just lost the games that you've lost to this point. It's how you've lost them and how you've played in those losses. The Trailblazers still feel like there isn't a rhythm, there isn't a continuity to the offense. So when you feel like you've lost games, but you've also been out of rhythm, those are feelings that you want to overcome quickly. It's not like you played really well and someone just came in and beat you.
Yeah.
It's that you really have beaten yourself. So that's where you are right now. So you want to go into a game like this versus a Cleveland Cavaliers team that is star-studded and come away with a victory that will help you in other areas as well.
I really feel like they just need to turn the ignition on. You know, I feel like we have seen in the last 12 quarters of basketball, 1 quarter of Trailblazers basketball. Just one. You know, I don't feel like we've really had what feels like we're watching Trailblazers basketball and what we've come to know. And it's just kind of an odd way to start. Like 247 says here in the chat, he says, it's way too early to be hovering on the panic button, but I was really frustrated with the game versus Golden State and how it ended. He's like, it's not just some sloppy play from the Blazers, but it's a poor decision making by the refs, you know. And I think that argument is there as well. But at the same time, you have to take that and know that you know, when calls aren't going your way or you're frustrated with calls, you cannot let that reflect on the basketball court, which is what it felt like. It felt like these guys just let the game and how it was being played get in their heads, which you just can't have that happen. Plain and simple. You have to maintain control and composure throughout. Early technicals, I mean, granted, some of them were silly. It was just a weird game, like I said. And I mean, when you guys were on Twitter and we were kind of live chatting and tweeting through the game, one of the things that we all kept saying was, this game just feels so weird. It is, but we have to right the ship. And it's not like we're really far off course. We just have to get in the zone.
Absolutely.
And there's no better way than to do it against a team right now. Like when we talk about the Cavaliers, they're not fully clicking yet either. You know, it's kind of like the first year of Miami when you're interjecting all these kind of players and they're trying to feel their way out. They're sitting at 1-1, had an opening night loss against the Knicks, but then came back and beat the Bulls, another good team. So there's a lot to see tonight when it comes to this team. One of the things that I want to get your take on, Orlando, is some of the little things. So we talked about how we were right in that game with the Warriors and that the Trailblazers are doing some little things better. And one of the things after the game they kept talking about was their defense. And how really that's what kept them in the game in a lot of ways, is the fact that they continue to play defense. What are some of the little positives that you're taking away from what we've seen so far in the Trailblazers that really, once the offense starts flowing, this whole thing is just going to come together, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the good and the bad. Because the good, like you said, there are some little things that are indicators that the Trailblazers are improving defensively over what we may have saw last season at times. And for me, it's the IQ, it's the rotations. We're seeing players that are rotating better. They're helping. I'm watching Dame on the pick and roll, and I'm actually pleased with his progress on defending the pick and roll, because sometimes the fact of the matter is you got a 250-pound guy setting the pick at the top of the key. It's hard, much harder than anyone could ever imagine to get over that screen. But he's staying close. He's recovering. Guys are hedging well enough to allow him to get back. The rotations, even when Chris Kaman comes in the game, you can see his IQ. Steve Blake, they're all playing really well. They're scrappy. They're on the floor. They're doing the things that are necessary. Here's where I say, so that's the good. The bad is there are points in every game where there's a key defensive stop that you have to have. And in those possessions, I think we've been mediocre. We can get better. We had one great stop against Golden State. It was obviously Klay Thompson missing a 3 from the corner. That was a good stop. That was a good opportunity to kind of capitalize. Obviously, there are other things that went on in the game that weren't as favorable. But those types of key stops are going to be important. I think the Trailblazers have to get those in a game versus the Cleveland Cavaliers to come out victorious.
Absolutely. And what you said in the first point was a really good question that's here from Brian. He wants to know, Dame says he worked really hard on his defense this summer. Do you see see a difference yet this year. And your analytical eye is going to show us, even though Damian has been struggling, has there been an improvement on defense?
I do think there's been an improvement on defense. One of the things, though, that I'm still waiting to see is if you notice Steph Curry's defense, and I didn't consider Steph Curry a very good defender at all last season, but when you've got guys that are quick, that are agile, and they show and demonstrate that quickness on offense, most people think you should be able to demonstrate the same level of quickness on defense. What I'm waiting for Dame to do is he's improved his pick and roll defense, in my opinion, but I'm also looking for him to be that on-ball defender who can contain a guy like a Steph Curry in a one-on-one situation. And guess what? We're going to have an opportunity to see that tonight versus Kyrie Irving, because he does a lot of one-on-one without the pick.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's something that we're going to talk about a little later in the show when we really get into the nitty-gritty of tonight, because when you have so many offensive threats that there are on this Cleveland team, this one-on-one defense and taking care of your man, which, you know, sometimes you would see guys switch. You would see either a Wesley Matthews or a Nicola Batum switch onto the point guard position.
Right.
Is that going to be an option tonight when they are both going to be handling one Mr. LeBron James? So that's something that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. There's some more questions in the chat. This one's a really good. Let's keep on the defensive defensive track here. And Boise Blazer wants to know, Orlando, why doesn't our defense create more turnovers?
You know, that's an excellent question. I really like that question because I've often looked at that as well. I've looked at the start of this season. I looked at turnovers, and we're really not getting a whole lot of them. But that's largely because the defense that the Trailblazers play is more of a pressure contain type of defense rather than a gambling, get out in the passing lane type of defense. When you have that type of defense, when you have the type of defense that allows you to create steals and turnovers, you have to, one, have someone who is going to protect the rim because you're going to be willing to gamble, and when you gamble, you're not going to get them all, and there's going to create open lanes to the basket. So you've got to have a shot blocker in there that's going to protect you in those situations. Then you've got to have more guys like a Nick Batum who can get out in passing lanes and who are willing with the long arms get their hands on the ball, and everybody knows that player's on the court. So you're watching a Nick Batum, and this is interesting. As a player, a teammate of a Nick Batum, when you know that they're in the passing lanes, you're expecting him to get a hand on the ball, so you're ready to shoot the gap to get to the pass that gets deflected. So those types of combinations really help you get more steals. The Blazers, however, don't play that type of defense. They are more of a pressure-contained defensive team, and it helps them be somewhat conservative on defense, but it also, in the long run, should help them be more successful on defense.
Well, and I would like to point out on that end, when we have seen the Trailblazers force turnovers, I can think of a couple right offhand in the first couple of games where Nicola Batum does actually, when he makes that decision, it's a smart decision, and he capitalizes it.
Excellent point.
Every time. I mean, you know what I mean? When he does make a decision, it's going to happen. He's going to get that steal.
Yes.
Same thing with Wesley Matthews. We haven't seen them shooting for it and then just grossly out of position.
Yeah.
So that's another really good kind of, I feel
Excellent
like, defensive marquee, and that they're not making the bad decisions that are going to leave the rest of the guys kind of high and dry to pick up the pieces for when they do shoot that gap. And when they do make those decisions, they are capitalizing. So sure, it might not be as much, but it's just smarter decisions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really like about what we're seeing so far on the defensive end. And I want to add a little bit when it comes to Damian Lillard there about what we're seeing. Yeah. Watch his hustle. Just the pace at which he's playing defense now is night and day from what it was last season.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's too small of a sample size really to tell if that's just an early season thing, but it seems to me like there's just that much more effort coming from Damian Lillard, which is the next growth step in becoming a good elite, strong defender. So just watch for that too. It's the little things that we're seeing right now. And I just want to say, overarching for where the Trailblazers are at, maybe you guys agree or don't agree, watch for those little things. It's some of the big things that aren't quite clicking yet, whether it's the ball movement or, the offense and hitting shots.
Sure.
Don't worry about those things.
Right.
Our team has returned 13 players.
Yes.
The offense will come. It totally will. That was our main strength last year. That kind of stuff just doesn't evaporate over a summer, but they were all focused on other things during the offseason, which we are now seeing play out, and will eventually, the icing on the cake that they have kind of rebuilt will be this offense when it starts to click. So just think about those kinds of things. You mentioned Nicola Batum just a second ago. We're going to take this one last question, then we'll take a quick break and come back for more of your guys' questions. Planet PDX wants to know, how do we get Nick more shots? Or does Nick just need to be more aggressive?
Yeah, at Planet PDX, that's a great question and a great point. I think one of the things when you look at the season, no one expected the offense to struggle. The reality of it is Nick Batum has often deferred his offensive production to being the third contributor, and that's been his approach to the game. In the games where he realizes the team needs to be more offensive or he needs to be more aggressive and there needs to be more offensive production, he's often stepped up. It's right now, because the chemistry is a little off, he's not able to find his place yet in being that option. Is he the first option? Does he wait for Dame to get going? Wesley Matthews has shot the ball well. Am I aggressive while Wesley's being aggressive? He needs to find that groove. And I think to the point, the question is, why doesn't he just be aggressive all the time, and then he doesn't have to worry about stepping it up? And I think that's where he needs to be. He needs to get to that point where it doesn't matter, and he considers himself a key offensive part of the offense, and that's what you need from Nick.
Yeah, and that's an interesting piece, though, because the first thing that comes up in my head is every player, no matter how good they are in our starting five, especially the four scoring threats, knows that the key to this game is distribution and not necessarily taking your own shot and just kind of making that right decision. And I would also say, as far as that, I mean, Nicola Batum has come out in those third quarters and really done what he needed to do. So whether it's kind of a lack and waiting to kind of feel the game out, maybe waiting a little longer than we might like, he is turning it on when that needs to happen. So that's another really a really good question there, though. Guys, let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and take more of your questions, and let's really dive into talking about what the Trailblazers have to do to make sure that they come out with a victory tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll be right back after this.